Hello, ladies. I am so blessed. Oh, my goodness. John, are we not blessed or what?
Every day.
I am so blessed, ladies, that you guys have found us, that you've tuned in. This is HIM4Her Radio, HIM4Her Radio, Women's Hot Topics, and we have a hot topic today. Many people have requested this, and I have brought in a guest for you that's just going to blow your mind. I can't wait till we get to the topic. Today's topic is going to be on seasonal depression. Yep, you heard me right. We all live up here in frosty Minnesota, and people are challenged with seasonal depression. And so we're going to talk about that, what that's all about, and where is God in all of this. But I want to first introduce my guest to you, Mr. Todd Mulliken. Thank you, Todd, for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Shug. It's always a pleasure.
Do you know, Todd, that you're being videotaped and you're going to be on YouTube?
Wow.
I know. I tell you, you're like a celebrity. And ladies, if you want a great counselor, I would highly recommend Todd. In fact, go on YouTube and look at him. If you're maybe intimidated about going in and meeting with a counselor, you already are a foot ahead when you get a chance to go on our YouTube, HIM4Her Radio, Women's Hot Topics, and listen to Todd. And not only listen to Todd, look at Todd, because he is the most calming presence. In fact, he looks like a Catholic priest today, even though I know he's not a Catholic priest.
Oh, my.
I know. So let me tell you about him. Todd is a counselor, an author, a professor, and speaker on marriage and families. And some of the problems that Todd can help you ladies with through his counseling services are marital and relationship problems, mood disorders. I tell you, there's days, Todd, I should be calling you up on that. Anxiety, stress, feelings of panic, ADHD, personality disorders, codependency, parenting issues, and the list goes on and on. If you'd like to find out about Todd's fabulous books, 4 of them, Being Right versus Being Liked. Ladies, that is such a good book. Not only did I have Todd come and train our entire HIM4Her team on that, but he also donated those books to our team. And it is one of the best books I have ever read, Being Right versus Being Liked. And then another book is called All the Best for Couples, All the Best for Parents, and A State of Affairs. And that's not a political book, is it, Todd?
Oh, it's not. It's not.
It's about affairs. So it's important that you read that as well, ladies. So welcome, Todd. I'm so thankful that you're on the show with me.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're my go-to counselor now. People have issues. I'm like, go to Todd. Go to Todd.
You're too kind. You are too kind.
Yeah. And do you work with a specific age group?
You know, as I'm getting older, I see people in their teens all the way up into their 80s. It's so interesting. So it really doesn't matter. I mean, I don't see people younger than 16 typically. I refer them to other folks that are in their 30s, but high schoolers all the way on up to folks that are on the end of life. So It's a wide range.
Good.
Yeah.
And you can find him at toddmulliken.com. Todd, you know how to spell that, ladies. Mulliken is his last name, MULLIKEN.com. Pretty easy to find him. So let's kick right into this topic, seasonal depression. First of all, what is it, Todd?
So it's called seasonal affective disorder. And it's actually a part of major depressive disorders. So it's not its own disorder anymore. We've weaved it into depressive disorders, Shug. And one thing to remember about depression in general is that it's very, very common. Only anxiety is more common. And about 17 to 20% of the population will have a depressive episode at some point in their story. So it's a very common problem. But depression tends to be episodic. Does that make sense? So more often than not, depression comes in a wave where we're feeling pretty good, and then it's kind of like getting the stomach flu, but at an emotional level, right, where you are just really tired, you're fatigued, you're out of it, you just don't feel good, and then it gets better. But boy, while we're in it, Shug, it really life feels overwhelming and difficult. So the seasonal specifier, we call it now, meaning that one way that depression in an episodic manner can show itself is seasonally. And so we see that during the winter months when there's less light. So like really interestingly, late August, early September there's a period of time, there's a couple of weeks where the days get a little bit shorter, a little bit quicker, a little bit less light, like 7 minutes shorter on a day versus 1. And boy, my counseling practice just flies up. And it's a kind of a kick-in to people that are vulnerable to seeing less light. And so we always want to remember that it's not one size fits all, and that people that are vulnerable to depression have two main issues that we all battle. One is a genetic predisposition to depression. So there's a family history there. There's some genetic makeup there where they usually have a lack of what we call serotonin, meaning that when they're under stress, they're more vulnerable to a lot of mood dysregularity, to really feeling down, to feel overwhelmed. So genetics matters, and then the environment matters. The stressors matter, right? So both those things matter in somebody's story. And that's a little bit about what it is. Now, the hard part about seasonal depression, Shug, is that it can last quite a while. The typical major depressive episode is 2 weeks, which is still really long. Okay, it's really hard to feel flat on your back emotionally, not feeling like you want to do anything, sometimes feeling overwhelmed and suicidal. It's really hard, and it's really overwhelming. And the problem with seasonal depressive stuff is that it lasts longer during that season of winter, typically, is when we see it.
So the sunlight plays a role on the way your physical chemistry operates. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And it's not the only thing, but it's one piece. And that's why one of the antidotes, it's not a cure-all. Different things work for different people. But sometimes people can hop online and buy, they have lights, for light therapy, where they have a light box and they put it on their kitchen table. And every morning for 20 minutes, they look into that. And it doesn't mean they're all set, but it's kind of like having that chicken noodle soup, right?
Yeah.
Just a little bit to ease yourself out of that episode slowly. And you don't want to push through it too fast, but sometimes people will use that. So, yeah, the light matters. It's a piece, especially loud, for seasonal affective disorder.
What do you mean by push through it too fast? I mean, isn't it, kind of dependent on your physical being, on how quickly you recover from this?
Yeah, great question. So I think what matters a lot is knowing how God has made you, right? Are you naturally more introverted in nature, where you like having a few friends versus a ton of acquaintances, but they're really close friends, and you like maybe doing one or two things a day and kind of easing into the day and more apt to reflect versus just talk out loud? Or are you more naturally extroverted, where you just love to get going and connect, and more the better, and just you're energized by activity and connectivity? So not one is better than the other, but it's important when we're in a depressive episode to know what energizes us naturally. So if you're an extrovert and you have SAD, seasonal affective disorder, you're in that episode, it's better sometimes to just kind of gently push through by calling that friend that you really wanted to see, just getting to the gym and talking to some of your people, just getting out and making those connections will help. You'll feel better on the other side of it than you would if you didn't.
Okay, those are great.
The introvert might be better off kind of easing into things by just taking a half a day off of work and reading and resting, maybe calling that one friend that's really, really close and just talking to them, but easing through it that way. So people each push through the sad part in different ways, Shug.
Okay.
And if you rush through it, it's just kind of like the flu. If you rush through the flu and you say, what, I'm just pushing through, sometimes it can be really not good.
Sure.
Right? Or on the other side, you just kind of stay stuck, right? So you have to kind of gently guide yourself through it.
How do you know you have seasonal depression?
So there's 10 symptoms, right? And we have to have at least 5 of these to have it. But interestingly about depression is 4 of them are related to energy. So one of them is just feeling like a lack of interest in activities. So what you normally like to do, you don't feel like doing it. Fatigue is the second one, where you feel like you got hit by a truck emotionally. A third is called psychomotor retardation. And what we mean by that is, we're just feeling really sluggish, and psychomotor means, our physical capability. And we're feeling sluggish in it. So again, we feel like we're in a fog. And then the fourth is a depressed mood more often than not each day. So those four have everything to do with energy. That's why a lot of the way we fight through depression over time is attack it with doing what's really life-giving for that particular individual and how God has made them. A few of the others would be things like oversleeping or undersleeping, overeating or undereating. So what happens in a depressive episode is we tend to go to extremes in either of those camps. Typically with depression, we're actually more vulnerable to what we call hypersomnia, where we oversleep and we're almost too sluggish, right? So sometimes we got to set the alarm 8 hours, and get up and take it easy, right? Having chicken noodle soup and a piece of toast, if you will, emotionally ease into the day. So those are a couple other symptoms. Then the others are a little bit more significant, where we have excessive guilt, right? We're really being really hard on ourselves, and we're, instead of having just a good conviction, like, yeah, that wasn't a good choice, we really are like, oh, I'm just not worth it. If I would have done that differently, kind of the woulda, coulda, shouldas are really loud. Another one is feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness. So we feel less than. It's easy to kind of forget that, we are held by God and we are loved even through this time of pain and hurt and feeling overwhelmed. It's just hard to remember that. Another one, the third of the last four, is we really struggle with concentration. It's hard because we have a hard time concentrating, and we're more indecisive. And then the last one, which doesn't happen all the time by any means, is kind of these suicidal thoughts that can kind of roll in from time to time. So those are typical 10 symptoms of a depressive episode. And somebody could have a mild case of that and have 2. Somebody could have a severe and have all 10. Somebody in the middle.
Those are just great signs for us to pay attention to, not only as a family member, but maybe this is happening to yourself as well. Ladies, if you're just tuning in, my name is Shug Bury, and this is HIM4Her Radio, Women's Hot Topics. And today's topic is on seasonal depression. And we are here with Todd Mulliken, and you can find him at toddmulliken.com online, and really reach out to him, ladies, if you're struggling with any of these symptoms that he shared. Now, at this time, we're in the middle of COVID. We're challenged with the pandemic. And I've got kind of a double question for you, Todd, if I could. The first question is, is it more frequent during the pandemic because people really aren't getting out and doing some of those things that are giving them life? And the second part of that question is, if you have a family member who's struggling with this, how can you help?
Great. So the first question, international research has recently suggested and done a lot of work through COVID, and the incidence rate of major depressive disorder has gone from, the 15 to 20% all the way up to 25%.
Wow.
Now, that may only sound like a 5% increase, but that is a truckload of people in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the word I'm using during COVID is magnified. Everything is more magnified. Everything is louder. So you are not alone if you're battling this. It's a common issue. The second thing is family member. I think the key is making sure we don't put our social worker cap on, our Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It cap on, but rather just to try to listen, to understand, to walk alongside, to be present, to really, like the book of James says, listen, quick to listen. Mm-hmm. Just let's be quick to listen and very slow to fix. Because what's really tricky is that if somebody doesn't have depression or has never had it in their life, and they have a family member that just has it, and we can look at the family history and see that Uncle Ron had it or our mother had it, mm-hmm. and that's the truth. we have to not get judgy on them and say, well, just suck it up, buttercup, let's go. And we have to be much more gentle and understanding. Sure, once in a while we might need to pick our spots and give them a gentle nudge and of encouragement and follow through, but we want to err on the side of walking alongside versus fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, that's a challenge for family members, especially when they're with each other 24 hours a day. At what point should someone who feels that they have this seek out help? Professional help.
It's such a good question. Here's some of the upside. One of the only silver linings I can think of with COVID is that access to healthcare. Like I do a lot of Zoom sessions every day. Shug, I do phone sessions as well as face-to-face, appropriate social distancing and everything like that. But and insurance covers those things now. They didn't cover, phone calls or Zoom sessions, but so there's more access for people. So I really think if you have, a few of those 10 symptoms and it's moved from a couple of days into a week, and for sure if you have a recurrent pattern of this on a yearly basis, please seek help because there are good remedies and good antidotes out there to act as healing agents that God can provide us, whether it is seeking for some medicinal tweaking, just a medicine that might help take the edge off, or it could be dietary tweaks, or it could be exercise, or it could be some time of prayer or some kind of a holy yoga experience. Different things work for different people, and we want to pursue every antidote that's at our beck and call so we get help, because it's really hard to suffer with that. And over 35% of the population, Shug, that have it still don't seek help. So it's still, even though mental health is much less stigmatized than it used to be, it still gets squishy for people. They still feel like, well, I should be able to overcome this on my own, versus when we're vulnerable like that, we all need help, just like we would for any medical condition.
Yeah. People, they feel like there's a stigma that I have to call a counselor, or I'm working with a counselor. How do you overcome that with some of your clients?
Well, first of all, I let them know they're in good company. We all have issues, and I'm here to walk alongside. I'm not Mr. Answer person, but that, you get to care for yourself. It is no different than seeking out a personal trainer for some exercise tweaking. It's no different than seeing your primary doctor if you're having headaches that's really overwhelming. It's actually a statement that you are powerful, and you are, like your opening song says, you are brave.
Yeah.
So I've been counseling since 1984, and there's much less of a stigma than there used to be, but it's still there.
Yeah.
So I invite people into it like we're all in this together, and it's actually a sign of courage and being brave.
Well, the great thing about you, Todd, is that you have a sense of humor. You're very approachable. When just even when you talk, it's a calming presence. And so maybe you can share a little bit about how does faith tie in to some of this healing? Yeah,
I think that the best way I can suggest this is God isn't a God that says, do as I say, not as I do. He's the God that has suffered. His son suffered, and Christ suffered. And so when you and I are suffering, we know that God's been there, and he provides for us the advocate, the Holy Spirit, as a comforter, so as a guide to walk alongside us. So what we get to do with that is remember that we're loved, remember that we're held, remember that he's for us. And that comfort, Shug, is helpful. Again, it's an aid for us to remember that we're loved and we get to be held while we're seeking good health. So our faith can be really helpful with bringing that calming presence and that comfort while we're just not feeling well. And we get off from that. And especially with those lies we tell ourselves when we're vulnerable to depression and guilt, we're told lies that just aren't true about us. And God can come in there, the Holy Spirit can say, what is true? You are loved. You are my beloved. I'm for you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. And God knows what suffering looks like. So I think those are some practical ways we can yield and let ourselves be loved and cared for by God through this.
I'm glad you didn't go right to, we've got drugs for this, or we can help you come out of this, with different prescriptions. You've mentioned so many great techniques and ways, such as diet and exercise and doing things. Maybe that might give you a lift for different types of personalities. Worship music, you didn't mention that, but that I know is helpful. Even music. in situations, if I'm feeling down, I'll put on some worship music and just allow the Holy Spirit to speak and talk to me. Does that seem to be effective and helpful for you as well?
Oh, absolutely. The music is a great medium, isn't it? And
yeah.
Again, you look for your passions, the things that make you connect. There's a thing called the Wild Five, and these are non-medicine techniques. I'm for medicine. I've seen it provide amazing healing, but I'm for other avenues too, and whatever works best for that person. And there's 5 things. There's exercise, there's nutrition, there's sleep optimization. So what that means is, how are you and I doing really protecting ourselves by getting a good night's sleep? That really matters during a time of depression. And then there's prayer or mindfulness, where we're just yielding to God and knowing that we're loved and praying through that and being held. And then there's social connectivity, where whatever that means for you, right? Whether it's those 15 acquaintances that are kind of good people you like plugging in with, or 2 friends that would just go to the mat for you at a deep level. Make sure we are connecting a little bit.
Do you recommend that if somebody struggles with seasonal depression, that they just call a friend and say, hey, I'm down, I'm struggling?
Yeah, I hope, I think it's such a great call out, Shug. Hopefully each of us have in our life 1 or 2 people we really, really, really trust that aren't going to come and fix us, but they're going to come and walk alongside us. And when we let each other in, that's how we can be the hands and feet of Christ to each other through really hard times. And if one of your listeners doesn't have something like that, I'd ask them to think about who that person might be. Just a person, like I'm sure that person that your listener would be to somebody else. I think it's really important we have a person or 2 like that in our life, and we let them in when we're down. I think it's a great call out.
Yeah. And also, ladies, you can reach out to Todd Mulliken. It's toddmulliken.com. Last name spelled MULLIKEN.com. He's got some fabulous books to read. And as you could tell, if you go on our HIM4Her YouTube, you can see that he has a calming presence, very approachable, and super easy to talk to. Todd, I thank you so much for coming on our show. This is not your first rodeo with us, is it?
Oh, you are so great, and I always appreciate it, and I appreciate your ministry. Thank you so much.
You've done such great work. I think we talked about the warning signs of an affair before and all sorts of things. So I just thank you for coming on. We also talked about being right versus being liked. And what is that word that goes with that? Narcissism.
So it's the impact of narcissism and codependency. So in general, people that want to be right all the time might have a vulnerability to narcissism. People that want to be liked all the time might have a vulnerability to codependency. It doesn't mean A equals B, but there's some vulnerabilities there.
So look up that show.
That
Absolutely. Ladies, look up that show. It's already taped. It's on our podcast. You can find us on podcasts everywhere after we air. We air live through AM 980 The Mission on Saturdays, Sundays, and Tuesdays. And after that, it goes right to podcast. But ladies, if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, maybe today is a day, because that is truly where healing begins. My name is Shug Bury, host of HIM4Her Radio Women's Hot Topics. You know I love you. Over and out.